So welcome everyone to day 2 and our 7th event of Dyslexia Show Virtual with um, we've got Neil Milliken with us from Atos. Really looking forward to this session. I've heard Neil speak before and I'm really looking forward to it. So I've got a question in the box about a few things, so I am going to read that later. I'll come back to that. Got to say a big thank you to all of our speakers. So yesterday we heard from Adrian, Haley, Darren and Jonathan. We had a really interesting, really personal perspectives both from Adrian and Haley, and some amazing information about Dragon Professional Anywhere and the Olympus products, both from Darren and from Jonathan. And of course, if you want to know more about pricing for both of them, our sponsor Dyslexia Box can help you with that as well. So that's really quite amazing. It was just an amazing day, lots of amazing feedback. Really appreciate everyone that sends their feedback into it. So, but a thank you to all of our speakers. So we're really looking forward today to hearing from Neil, Michael, Lauren, and Mary. It's going to be an amazing morning stroke afternoon. Don't forget, if you haven't done your CPD on the Eventbrite, you can upgrade your ticket. Just scan the QR code. It's £29 plus the VAT. That gives you the CPD certification for all 10 sessions. All 8 sessions that we're doing today, all 8 sessions we've done over the last 2 days. So please do that if you want to. If you don't want to, don't worry about it. You won't get a certificate for the event. And of course, we've got to say a big thank you to Dyslexia Box. Dyslexia Box is the all-round accessibility and workplace needs company, offering assistive technology, offering workplace needs assessments, both through Access to Work and privately. So if you want to find out any more about them, go to dyslexiabox.com. And of course, our lead sponsor for the whole of Dyslexia Show, Claro Software, a big thank you to them. All the rest of the sponsors, we've got to say thank you to Nessie Scanning Pens, Fairley House, St David's College, Unique Ability Consulting, SEN Legal, and of course our supporters, the BDA, Study with Dyslexia Blog, SEN Books, Helen Arkell, Recite Me, English Type, London Grid for Learning, Special Direct, Touch Type Reading Spell, Patos, and the SEND group. Really appreciate that. It is. Don't forget, we want you to talk, tweet us, scan a picture, take a picture of the slide, of the slide you're watching. Use the hashtag DSVirtual on Twitter at Dyslexia Show UK, and on Facebook it's at Dyslexia Show 2020. If you want to join our LinkedIn group, if you're on LinkedIn and want to join the Dyslexia Workplace group, there's the QR code to scan for that. That's the QR code to scan for that link for it. We are going to send that link out to everyone anyway, so if you want, don't worry about it. An email will come out tomorrow or over the next few days with the recordings and with that link. So just to remind everyone, you're all in listen only mode. The webinar is being recorded. You want to put questions or comments in the question box. There will be a Q&A session at the end of Neil's session, and like I said, if you've got any comments, it's really good to see them. So I'm going to read the person's out. I won't read people's names out, as I said yesterday. I won't read people's names out. I will just read the questions out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Neil in now. Neil, can you still hear me okay? Can we still hear you okay?
I can indeed.
That's
yes.
Brilliant. That's good. So if you look on your screen now, you should have a box now appear that says show my screen. And if you press it, right, I can see your screen, the flowers, where your mouse is.
Yeah, lovely. So I need monitor 2. That would be the one. Right? Can you now see?
I can see that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I can see your presentation.
Okay.
That's fine. I'm going to hand over to Neil to do today's presentation. I'll come back when he's finished to do any questions you have for him. So over to you, Neil.
Okay. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you all today. I'd agreed originally to do this presentation in person. This is somewhat adapted because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. So this is a personal perspective on dyslexia in the workplace, and of course it's updated for lockdown. So who am I? I'm Global Head of Accessibility for Atos. We're a large IT services and digital transformation company. We've got about 110,000 employees globally, doing everything from providing infrastructure to supercomputers to powering the Olympic and Paralympic Games, to doing more mundane stuff like delivering your desktop if you're working for various different government departments. I'm a W3C expert on cognitive accessibility. So W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium They're the people that really sort of define how we should deliver the internet and what the rules are and standards, etc. I'm a member of a couple of think tanks within our organization called Scientific Community, and I'm supposedly a distinguished expert, which is one of our sort of non-managerial tracks for people that have sort of specialist knowledge within our organization. But more importantly, personally, I'm dyslexic and I have ADHD. I use assistive technology and have been for the best part of 2 decades. I'm digitally naturalized, so I wasn't born using tech, not like generations today. In fact, I was very low tech when I was growing up, but I had a Damascene conversion. And now I scored 88% millennial in my attitudes towards technology and how we use it. I'm predisposed to being social, love talking. I'm impatient because I want to make change happen, but patient enough to work in a large organization where that change happens slowly, which is why I need to be evangelistic. So if you've heard of management profiling, there's one called Facet 5, which has me down as an advocate, because in my role, it's all about winning hearts and minds. Outside of work at Atos, I'm co-founder of the largest Twitter chat in Europe on any topic. It just happens to be about accessibility and inclusion. It's called Access Chat, and we've had Aaron as a guest. I'm chair of the diversity board for the UK Institute of Coding because I'm passionate about making sure that we include people in our technology education, which will then help build a more inclusive future. I'm a board member of World Institute on Disability, which is a global disability charity, and I'm a board member of Genius Within, which is a community interest company focusing on the positives of neurodiversity. So enough about me. Dyslexia is a part of neurodiversity, but what's in the name? There's lots of debate around the language. Some of the latest thinking is that neurodiversity encompasses everyone, including people who are neurotypical. Neurotypical is the term used to refer to people that are fitting the statistical norms, that are neurologically typical. Proud to say that I don't fit into that category. I am neurodivergent or have a number of neuroatypicalities. So I am dyslexic, as I mentioned, and I also have ADHD. Now, these things obviously have benefits because we have spiky profiles, but they also come with some challenges, which I'm going to talk about over the next coming minutes. Many people still use the term neurodiversity to refer to people with neurodivergent traits. Some of this is quite confusing because this is a new area of thinking. The terminology can be a little vague and the thinking is changing. Key point to remember is that difference is not a deficit. We have strengths, and I think that the diagram created by Nancy Doyle for Genius Within, based upon the work of Mary Colley, who defined a lot of the stuff for Danda on neurodiversity, is really nice because it's looking at people's strengths and also the overlaps, because one of the things about neurodiversity is that quite often there are significant overlaps between some of these conditions. So like dyslexia and ADHD, I've got the visual thinking and the creativity, some of the 3D mechanical skills, but I certainly have the hyper focus, the energy and passion, etc. of ADHD as well. That said, I've probably got some of the empathy skills of DCD dyspraxia, as well as the ability to walk into tables and cover myself in bruises. So this will not surprise you. This simulation is not entirely accurate. I don't see pages like this, but it is something that I use constantly to explain to colleagues that don't understand dyslexia or don't have any kind of exposure to it, to really explain the challenge of absorbing information in written form. Now, the words don't move like this for me, but you can make out the meaning of this text. It's just a lot harder, and that's the point. People quite frequently erroneously assume that because I have dyslexia, I can't read. It's not true. I do read. I read all day long. Sometimes it drives me nuts, and sometimes I read badly. But I have 2 degrees, one of which is in English literature and history, another one in business. I just benefit from the way in which people present that written language, preferably keeping stuff simple, clear, unambiguous, using nice, clear fonts of a decent size with decent spacing, left justified. All of these things are really helpful to enable me to absorb the information more easily. One of the things where I definitely struggle is my working memory. It is a bit of a joke that goldfishes have a very bad working memory. Well, it's no joke that I do too. Areas where this can affect me include things like note-taking, online meetings where I'm trying to do multiple things at once, following directions. I am a great fan of satellite navigation software. It's brilliant. It saves me so much hassle because although I am male, the reason that I don't stop and ask for directions is that I can't remember the instructions that anyone gives me. I used to constantly be getting lost. It's one of the things that is a pretty much staple in my life, is getting lost. And I used to pull up to the curb, ask someone for directions, and by the time they got to the 3rd item, I'd forgotten what the first one is. This also affects me when I'm using software. I sometimes have real difficulty remembering the critically important thing I was doing before I got distracted. Now, distraction is everywhere now in the age that we're working in. We have notifications going off. We have multiple communications channels. It's just that distraction is exacerbated if you have a neurodivergent condition. And I'm going to talk about some of the things you might want to do about that when we get a bit further on. So if you want to make me feel nervous, and I don't get nervous easily, ask me to take meeting minutes, because the combination of having to listen, concentrate, and then write the minutes in public where everyone can view me is enough to send me over the edge. One of the things that was always fun to watch as a participant in the task force for the W3C cognitive accessibility was when the chair would ask for someone to take minutes. You got 20 people on the line, all of whom have dyslexia or some other neurodivergent condition, none of whom want to take the minutes. Paperwork, it's not my thing. I fight with forms. Online forms are hard, but they do have the advantage of being able to use tools to automate some of the process. I was one of these people that when we had to fill out everything by paper and pen, that would always take 4 or 5 copies of a form because it would take me that many attempts to fill it out. Usually, even the finished form would have a sort of topology of Tipex encrusted over the form. There'd be crossings out, and I'd submit it, and there would be spelling mistakes. So please don't make me use paper, because it's so much harder to spot the mistakes. It's so much harder to write stuff and get it right. If you are creating forms, and this is particularly if people are creating forms on the web, when I make a mistake, please take me to where I've made the mistake, highlight it, tell me what I need to do, and don't take me back to the beginning. Because the most confusing thing of all is just to be booted back to the beginning with no idea of what it is that you've done wrong. So dyslexia means I see things differently, where some people can't see the wood for the trees. As a dyslexic, I see forests. And I'm a big fan of the spell checker. It's got me out of a lot of holes in the past. Going digital has meant for me a total revelation in that I don't have to feel nervous about submitting written work that is riddled with mistakes anymore. But in this particular case, I spelt it correctly because I want to illustrate the point that actually there is some real benefit to having a different point of view, a different perspective on life, and that businesses can benefit from this. Good examples of businesses that are actively recruiting neurodivergent people, particularly dyslexia, GCHQ and the security services. Cybersecurity in general is an industry that is looking to find people that think differently, to solve problems in different ways, and also to outthink the bad guys. Because it's a constant battle between the people that are trying to get your information and the organizations trying to secure it. So let's talk about some tools. I mentioned spell checkers, but also grammar checkers. I always have this enabled because it makes my life so much better. When we're talking about working in a corporate environment, some of the cloud-based tools that you may have used at home or as a student may be banned, because stuff that runs in the cloud that is not telling you where that information is stored, that is scraping information, may have significant privacy issues, and organizations may decide that it is too much of a security risk to enable their sensitive information to be processed by something that is outside of their control. Confusable word checking is super useful, especially if you've been dictating. So there are tools specifically that will check for those, and I'll come to them in a minute. I mentioned that I do read, and I read a lot, but I also like to listen to long documents. The reason I like to listen to documents is that it actually helps me to focus and not skip over information, because I have a tendency when I'm reading to jump around a document, to look and pick out certain things and then miss other bits of the text. I might miss important bits of information. Basic text-to-speech is available on all of the major operating systems, whether that be mobile phone, so Android or iOS, or if you're using a Chromebook, or if you're using Windows or a Mac. Basic text-to-speech is available to everyone. And most of them offer synchronized highlighting too, which helps with the word recognition. There's increasing sophistication as well. So a lot of the tools that are offered for free are getting more and more sophisticated. You've got more and more options. So for example, Microsoft have a product called Immersive Reader, which is available in lots of different Microsoft products, which does a whole lot more than just reading out loud to you with synchronized highlighting. It breaks down the words into the various different components. It will allow you to change your background colors and fonts. All of this is free. And It's just a question of knowing that it's there. However, at the moment, the free tools don't always operate consistently, and so frequent users may prefer a dedicated app with the additional features such as the homonym and homophone checking, the confusables checking, etc., and word prediction in something that works across all of their applications, in which case there are tools like Read and Write or ClaraRead that are more consistent and provide that support across the operating system. Both of these tools are used in enterprise. We use both within my own organization, and we supply both to our customers as well. So some of it is based on preference, but they're certainly widely deployed. So probably my biggest friend is Dragon, speech recognition. It's super useful. It's one of the things that I really use on a regular basis. Basic dictation is available on all of the operating systems. It's pretty much ubiquitous these days, and a lot of people don't even think of it as an assistive tech anymore. I've been shouting at computers for the last 20 years, and it's really only in the last few that they've started answering back. For more frequent use, again, a dedicated application is worth the investment, because correction is a real pain, and a lot of the free stuff is difficult to correct. Speaking is far easier than typing, and for me, I can access a higher level of vocabulary and allow my thoughts to flow much better when I'm speaking than when I'm trying to hunt and peck on a keyboard. Of course, speech recognition spells stuff correctly, but may misrecognize words. So when you're using speech recognition, you need to find new ways of proofing, because the squiggly red line no longer works for you. This is where tools like Claro and Read and Write come in. Also, you can listen back to stuff. So when you play back your dictated text and have it read to you with text-to-speech, it will suddenly make no sense, because it's reading the words that are on the page and not the ones that you've dictated, and then you can proof using it that way. Be aware that you need to train your Dragon for best results. If you use complex vocabulary or do things that require repetition of text a lot of times, you can create macros, and you can also get it to analyze your email and documents to pick out words that you frequently use. This is worth doing, but I wouldn't recommend doing it in the middle of your working day, because it takes a long time to run, especially if you have 50,000 emails like I do. So not all tools are technological. For this, it's just a simple methodology. It's called the Eisenhower decision matrix, and it's something that I've employed in my life for the last decade and a half to help me make decisions, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the things you need to do and not understand which things are important and work out how to prioritize. So this simple matrix was invented by General Eisenhower, who led the Allied forces in the Second World War, later to become president, and it was the thing that he used to work out what he needed to do and whether or not even he needed to do it. What I'd recommend doing is actually working through some of this with someone, because quite often it will be useful for them to understand what you've got on your plate, but also they might help you understand really what the priorities are. Mind mapping is also something that I've used for a very long time. When I'm thinking about stuff and I need to get my ideas down quickly, I like to use mind mapping, and that helps me get the basic key points of something that I want to write down, and then structure it. Now, there are various different mind mapping tools on the market, and to a certain extent, it's everybody's choice. I have a preference for inspiration, and the reason I have a preference for that, and it's personal, is that it enables me to rapidly dump my ideas down and then structure afterwards. Others force a structure upon you, and some people prefer it that way. But for me, because of my memory issues, I want to get my ideas down before they disappear forever. Once they're down, then I can arrange them. And in fact, when I was doing my master's, the way that I structured all of my dissertations and essays and writing was that I would get my ideas into inspiration, I would drag them around, I would then export that into heading view, and then I would use Dragon and I would dictate all of the stuff in between. And that worked really well for me, because then I knew exactly what I was going to talk about at which point, and I didn't go off on wild tangents. I used to be on pretty much first name terms with all of the people on our IT service desk, because I don't know about you, but the combination of short-term memory, the uncanny ability to get the sequencing wrong when I'm typing stuff, meant that I was forever mucking up passwords and locking myself out of various different systems. These days, I have a combination of things that really help me. One is biometrics. A lot of the stuff is now saved for either fingerprint or Face ID. The other is that I use a password safe. Again, lots of them on the market. Most of them do the same kind of things. They can store your passwords, they can generate secure ones, and they can be completely unintelligible because you don't have to remember them and type them in yourself. They will allow you to visit a website and log in automatically. It's wonderful. They will also allow you to store and enter payment details. Pretty important stuff, but they do this securely. So make sure that when you're looking for password managers, make sure that the stuff is encrypted. Form filling, again, I mentioned how painful this was before. I use my password manager to fill out a lot of basic information on forms for me. They are not perfect. Sometimes they get the stuff in the wrong place. So you do have a bit of a pain sometimes. And sometimes where there is a form field and you're wanting to enter something else, they're going to force you to try and put in your details. So you have to tell them to ignore it. The best ones synchronize your details across multiple devices. And I would say that it's worth paying the money to get one of these, because otherwise, if you get your passwords out of sync, you'll get into that horrible situation where you can't remember which one is actually the right password, and you're likely to be stuck in a horrible situation where you're constantly resetting. So synchronization is worth every penny. So I said that this was adapted for lockdown. Well, we're all working from home now, or rather coping from home in a crisis and trying to work at the same time. Some people didn't really like the office, and it really does depend on the office environment, how well it suits you. I've had good office environments, and I've had ones that have been really terrible for working in. So, for example, open plan offices are not good for me. In fact, an open plan office located next to the kitchen and the bean to cup coffee machine that grinds from 8:30 till 11 o'clock every morning was pretty much enough to send me over the edge. There are things you can do, of course. Noise cancelling headphones do help, but they don't block out everything. And they don't block out all of the stuff of people moving in your peripheral vision. I've worked from home for the last 5 or so years, so the change for me in terms of lockdown hasn't been that great. But I have already created a working environment that works for me. So I have a proper desk and chairs and all of this kind of stuff. And that's important because not only do you want to try and have the space, you want to try and avoid the distractions. It's not good when people are sort of crouched over the kitchen table or balancing their work laptop on the edge of the sofa for 8 or 9 hours a day. That said, not everyone has the luxury. So that's why I say, if you can separate your work and home spaces, not just for ergonomic reasons and sort of health reasons, but for your own sanity, because actually some kind of separation is really important. It's very easy when you're working from home to end up working extremely long hours and get sucked in, or conversely, get distracted and not end up doing the things that you need to do in order to work. So again, I say try not to let work and home bleed into each other too much. This can be challenging because you're at home, you're in a space with family, and expectations change. People have additional responsibilities right now, looking after kids, looking after all sorts of things that they didn't have, which impinge on working life that you wouldn't have had perhaps before. So all we can say is really try to create separation, try to think about how you might structure your day. If you do need to take on additional family and caring responsibilities, actually talk with your colleagues, try and put some structure around this, and diary management is a key thing for this. I'm really, really easily distracted. That's part of dyslexia, but it's also part of my ADHD. So try turning stuff off. Twitter, Facebook, all of the various different sites have a tendency to want to notify you and draw your attention, when actually what you want to be doing is focusing on the work that you need to do, especially once you've prioritized it using your matrix. So I would recommend putting yourself on Do Not Disturb and turning off notifications. Actually, if you have a mobile phone, go through the settings for your notifications. There are lots and lots of apps there that you really don't need to tell you that someone has posted. They may want you to know about it, but you don't need to know. So turn them off. Book some time to check your Instagram, rather than it coming and telling you that you need to focus on it when actually you've got a deadline to submit some work. Windows has a feature called Focus Assist, which allows you to turn down the number of notifications that you get. This is useful, and in fact, their mailbox has something called Focused Inbox, which looks at the sort of most important things. I'm a little wary of some of these features because they're not 100% polished, and I have missed out on stuff because the algorithms have decided that something wasn't important when actually it was something that I did need to know. So I actually don't use Focused Inbox, but I do use Focus Assist. There are things like Do Not Disturb on your iPhone as well, and you can turn that on for things like meetings so that you don't get distracted when you're trying to listen in. It's very easy, and I am really guilty of wandering off and doing other stuff. whilst I should be concentrating on the task at hand. My sense of time is elastic. I don't necessarily know what day it is, let alone what date it is. I quite often have conversations with my wife, and she says, well, what's the date today? And I don't know. It's a Wednesday, I think. That's why my phone's good, because it'll tell me the date. I do also have it on my watch, but quite often I forget to update that, so it might be the wrong day, and I wouldn't know. I misread meeting times frequently, and actually the way that things have been designed can be challenging, because actually if you use something like Outlook, it's very easy to see what the time is on a Monday, because the times are running right next to the bits on your calendar. But by the time it gets to Friday, having issues with tracking means that it's difficult for me to actually see whether it's 12 or 12:30. It's not uncommon for me to book a meeting in the past, or on a weekend, or on the wrong day. And in fact, I've traveled around the country on rail tickets that have been for previous days. It's cost me a lot of money. Sometimes people take pity on me, but this is why I rely on tasks, calendars, and reminders. And when they fail, I do too. Lots of people tell you to write to-do lists, and I do too. But to-do lists don't actually help you get stuff done. They tell you that you need to do stuff, but they don't give you a time in which to do stuff. So it's really important, and this is something that I've benefited from, is booking meetings with myself, blocking time to do things that I must get done. So rather than setting myself tasks, I block time. Definitely be generous in your estimations of how long stuff will take, because the likelihood is, if you're like me, you're not going to start it exactly on time, and you may get distracted in the middle. Don't beat yourself up if you don't manage to do it at the allotted time. All sorts of things may get in your way. We live in a world where demands pop up all of the time. But if you don't do it at the allotted time, put it back in your schedule until you do. I mentioned that I frequently get lost, but my working life is full of uncertainty of where to go, both in the physical and digital world. So if I'm going for a meeting, it might be problematic. I have left-right confusion. The way that I tell my left and my right is knowing which hand my watch is on, and because I was ambidextrous as a kid, my watch is actually on my right hand, which confuses people even more. I have interface blindness, so I can't remember interfaces. I have to sort of find my way around them. So I'm looking for landmarks and memorable locations within applications. Even if I use stuff every day, it can be a struggle to actually find my way around, and I don't always remember how to do stuff. This is even more problematic in this modern age of what we call Evergreen IT, where updates are coming thick and fast. And in fact, even though you may have remembered right, the interface has changed since you last used it. So often it's a continuous case of trial and error and discovery. And I'm much better at doing this on my own than with an audience. People that are designing systems can make my life easier by making stuff obvious and not hiding things. There has been a tendency to put stuff off screen. Well, the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. So if I can't see it, I probably won't be able to do it. Some of the work that we've been doing in my own organization to help people understand some of the issues has been using things like augmented reality and virtual reality to create simulations. particularly around distractions and the difficulty absorbing information. So working with the BBC and the Bioengineering Institute in Barcelona, which has an offshoot called SPECS, we created this simulation which is of a classroom and basically gives you the opportunity to be overstimulated, to be distracted, and then tested at the end to see whether or not you've absorbed any of the information that was out there. This is not meant to be anything more than just an awareness raising tool, but it also has various different things like raising pulse rate, heartbeat, etc., monitoring these things, so you can actually feel the anxiety as well. Because actually, quite a lot of the time, when you're distracted and you're trying to concentrate and you know that you need to do stuff, this can be actually quite tough psychologically. This is my favorite worst website in the world. It's from Ling Valentine. She won Dragon's Den. It's completely unusable. It's completely inaccessible. And it's just overloading and distracting. I use this because it's a bit of fun, because essentially it's so bad that everybody gets it immediately. But this is also a problem, because what we have here is not really perceivable. You know, we've got such minimal design that essentially we're reducing the number of people that can use the website. You've got grey on light grey, which is barely visible. You've got hollow buttons which sort of disappear into the background. Can you see the button that says food and menu? This is a great example of style over substance, and essentially I'm a great advocate of stuff that is functional, because the function is the most important thing. We need people to be able to complete the actions online, whether that be on a website or using software. There is no point in designing stuff that people can't use. We also have ambiguity. The duplication of contact or inquire means that people are not sure what they need to do. And ambiguity is a real problem for people like me, because I want clarity. Reducing ambiguity is giving people affordances. Affordances are the things that make it obvious what it is people need to do. It's a great example from Apple, where they changed their design schema and suddenly, instead of buttons, you had text. This was really hard for people to use, particularly people who were neurodivergent, people like me. The accessibility option of adding button shapes make it much more obvious. They also have a target for you to hit. When it's just text, you don't know where you need to put your finger. It's also really helpful if you're designing products and systems to make sure that controls are consistent across all of your websites and your products, and that the targets are big enough. We want people to be able to use stuff. I know it sounds repetitive, but that's the purpose of technology. It's there to be used. Otherwise, there is a cost. There's a cost to the individual because they can't use it. They feel stupid. They may feel like they then don't have access to products and services or are unable to do their work. And there's a cost to the organization. So when I couldn't use all of the passwords within my working environment and I was constantly locking myself out, that was costing my organization money. It costs on average about £12 to handle a service desk call because of the phone lines, the employee time, the logging of tickets, the following up. It's surprisingly expensive. So by reducing mistakes, you're actually saving the organization time and money. So if your organization is saying, oh, we can't make stuff more accessible, we can't make it more obvious because it's too expensive, you have a good counter argument that not doing it is also costing them a lot of money. A lot of people like me who have dyslexia have a real problem with glare. High contrast modes that work for people with visual impairments are really not suitable for dyslexia. Consider when you create documents not using so much white, he says, having done a presentation with lots of white in it. iOS has something called reduce white point in the accessibility settings. It's pretty much the first thing that I turn on. You can do similar stuff in Windows as well through the color filters. Just reducing the background glare makes stuff a lot easier to read and a lot easier to absorb that information. Try to allow people, if you're designing systems, to have some choice. Choose the background, the fonts that work for them. Don't assume that everyone with dyslexia wants a cream background with royal blue fonts. Not my personal taste. Yes, it's better than high contrast, but everyone has their own personal preferences. So I think I've pretty much taken up enough time. I hope that there's a bit of time for questions if there are people out there that would like to ask questions. I know I've not covered everything, and this has definitely been, my personal take on what it's like and how I manage some of the issues that I face in the workplace.
I think it was amazing, Neil. It's like, I think it's the fourth time I've heard you speak, and you speak differently every time, and it was brilliant to hear.
That's because I can't remember.
That's the thing. I was thinking that as well. It was brilliant. We've got there's lots of people saying stuff. So I'm going to go from the top and just read it out. So someone just says, "Morning. Sorry I missed yesterday. My dyslexic organisation skills have got to get better for me. I forgot. Really sorry. I bet I missed a really good day. Looking forward to watching it again. On kind regards." And then the same person, this is a gentleman that came. He's been I know he's a teacher, and I know that he's starting his own business up. Really like the QR codes, just missed them, so maybe next time. So that's fine. I'm going to leave them up a little bit better. Someone has just said we've got there's a lot of comments for you, Neil. Really good positive comments. It says here. So it says this is my dyslexia causing me a small issue. Important and evangelist, great traits to have. Board members of many groups, or you also work with do you also work with local authorities at all?
So I don't directly work with local authorities, although they are customers. So sometimes yes, but not. I don't spend a lot of time working with local authorities. I'm in a role that's sort of fairly global now, so I work across lots of different areas. But some of my colleagues do.
Yeah, I think the person's asking, I know the person who's asking, and they're looking at how to ensure that local authorities are more accessible when it comes to dyslexia. So that's
happy to have a conversation.
That's fine. So that's good. I really relate to many things you're saying that you said, Neil. I've just done my first part of my course of my business startup, new website. The question on how to allow the question that they won't allow cut and paste has took me hours. It took me hours to spell check and I'm not unsure text help. I could not. Sorry, I could not use text help, or I could not use text help. They have let me do it in Word now, less stress. So that's down to doing something online. That's really useful to know. Fantastic presentation. Thank you so much, Neil. I have two questions. Do you feel the attitude of dyslexia in employees are changing in the workplace? And then the second question is, what is the biggest barrier to rem I'm going to let you do this, Neil. I'm going to read the first question again. You answer the first question,
Yeah.
and I'm going to use Claro to read the second question while you do it. So,
Yeah, that's fine. So I do think that attitudes are changing towards dyslexia and neurodiversity in general. I think that people are aware that we all have strengths and stuff to give. I think that we still have a long way to go. I think that there's a lot of stuff that is in job design that can be improved, and that there has been a tendency within lots of digital businesses to try and save money and push admin onto individuals. It's like, oh right, well you can do this yourself now. Well, actually, no. Not always, and what you can end up doing is actually creating a sort of consistency of mediocrity across your organization.
yeah,
So job design and actually finding people and designing sort of your organization so that people are always working towards, for the most part, their strengths,
yeah,
rather than pushing everyone to a similar level of mediocrity, I think is really important. And I think that that's something that we still have some way to go on, but there is an understanding that this is important for businesses, for their own productivity and the well-being of individuals.
yeah. The second question was, what is the biggest barrier that still remains in the workplace for dyslexic employees?
So whilst I said that attitudes are changing, they haven't fully changed. So there is actually, I think fear is the biggest barrier.
Yeah.
Fear of derision, fear of being outed. That's sort of the idea that it's associated with lower intellect, which is not true. Is something that puts people off from talking about their dyslexia. It's why I describe myself as an out dyslexic. I think we've got a lot to learn from the Pride movement and the LGBT community, because there has been sort of this stigma associated with difficulties with reading. Same for dyscalculia. In fact, even worse for dyscalculia, because the lack of understanding around maths is even worse. But it requires people to come out and talk about it. But I know that can be hard. But that's one of the things that I've been conscious that I in my position of privilege, that I can be a role model, and I will talk about it, and I will be out, and I want to say, yes, you can be successful.
Yeah.
Dyslexia can actually be a part of your success and a contributor to your success, but you need to be open about it.
Definitely agree with that. It is. I think you're definitely right as well about the admin level. Looking at it personally, and how when you have a new member of staff that becomes in a senior role, that then changes the way that that they deliver admin. And my biggest issue was always timesheets, so that then they could.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to do a product placement here, because I've just bought this thing called Timula, which is basically, it's a diamond-shaped device which I turn over when I start a new project. So if I'm doing something for Dyslexia Show, I have it on Dyslexia Show. If I'm doing something for other projects, I turn it to that project, and it basically gives me a snapshot on every day of how many minutes I've spent on everything. And it means then that if I need to bill for time, I've got it. So that's just something that I found. I've only had it for 3 days, and I'm actually finding it quite useful. and it also means you've got something physical to go, actually, I'm now stopping that piece of work, I'm moving on to the next one to help with my ADHD tendencies. So
That sounds awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'll send you the link so you can have a look. So
thank you.
it says there, thank you, Aaron and Neil, amazing webinar. Time manage, very, 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 very useful. Positive role model. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. This was really interesting presentation. The person says they've missed the first half. Don't worry, you will get the recording in a few days' time. I really enjoyed your visual presentation on difficulties associating with these conditions. Wow, I relate to every word. Your multisensory slides are perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Neil, in big bold text. This was brilliant. Thank you. Really inspiring. Brilliant presentation. Fantastic. I could listen to you all day. I echo Aaron opinion. Amazing. Enjoyable webinar. Thank you. Really useful information. Thank you, Neil, for everything. I'm from an HEI student, and it's all okay. Fantastic, made me feel a lot better and not different. It's the first workplace. It is the first workplace that is great. So that's fine. Are there any? So this is a question that came up. Do you know of any alternatives for Dragon for Mac users as it's been discontinued?
That's a significant issue. You're basically stuck with the dictation features that are on offer embedded in the tools that are there. You can use things like the Google voice dictation. The issue that all of these have that Dragon beat everyone hands down on was correction.
Yeah.
Because when I'm dictating, it's the correction that takes the time. The creating text is quick, but going back and correcting stuff and having to do that manually and typing it is a pain. So the ability to correct is where Dragon wins. What I would say is that you could use something like Parallels, which is a piece of software that allows you to run Windows apps on a Mac.
No, that's good. It's definitely interesting. So I'm just going down. So we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. I'm going to go probably about 3 minutes over, just because I want to read some more of these.
Sure.
So it says there, thank you for your presentation. You're brilliant. Real hit home. Have you faced any prejudice when you're in the workplace, when you're going for your promotion? And then that's what it says. It's basically, yeah. Do you find any prejudice in the workplace when you're talking about your dyslexia? Is that the right word?
I've been fairly lucky, but I do see it.
Oh,
so
sorry.
Not so much directly applied to me.
Yeah. So what it was is I'll reread the question. I've just used Clara to read it. Sorry, Neil. It says that Have you faced any prejudice when you've gone for promotion within an organisation? That's what it is.
So I don't think I've faced significant barriers over promotion, partly because of the role I'm in, right? So it's harder to say, oh well, we can't promote you as an accessibility person because of your disability. That would not go down too well. However, I have seen it in organizations for other people where it's become problematic, and for sure there is discrimination and there is lack of preparedness and willingness to make the adjustments that people would need to be successful in those kind of roles when they could actually be very good. So that's something that we will have to continue advocating for and defending people.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. So I'm just going down here. I'm just looking at it. Do you have any of your own tailored adjustments planned in place in work?
Oh, so yeah, I do. I mean, I use Dragon. I have Dragon. I have Inspiration. So for when I'm really getting my ideas down, I do still use Inspiration. It looks the same now as when I started using it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But it works for me.
Yeah. And that's
So
the wording, isn't it? It works for
yeah,
you.
it works for me. Yeah,
That's the word.
and nothing has the kind of flexibility of that quick rapid fire idea entry, which for me is the reason why I still use it.
Neil, you've gone a bit funny there.
It's not that it looks pretty; it doesn't. But it works. The other thing that I have, which I'm really privileged to have, is I have admin support.
Yeah.
So I have a part-time PA that helps me, which is necessary. So I mean, partly I get this because of my dyslexia, and partly because I've reached a certain level within my organization where I'm entitled to have some help anyway, to support the sort of management admin overload, but I get more of it.
Yeah.
What I would say is that I went through Access to Work, and they agreed to pay for some of it, but the amount of paperwork required to claim back the small amount of money that they were offering made it too onerous, so I never bothered. And they were all paper forms.
Yeah, that is true. And you know what I found? So as most people will know, if you've ever listened to me talk before, I use Access to Work as well. So the benefit that I have is that my support worker fills the forms out and I just sign it. Because that was, they are onerous, there is, and at the moment, yes, they're still paper-based. I'm just looking down all the questions, Neil, because I'm looking at the time and wanting to come to a close. There's some really good comments, some really good feedback. So one person's just asked the difference between Claro and Text Help, and what the benefits are. I'm going to say to you that actually that if you come to the next session, at 11:30 is going to be by Mary from Claro. So if you want to listen to that one, that will give you an insight into Claro, and then if you want to drop me an email, I can send you a link to a video about Text Help. People have asked, there is a few questions that people have asked. If you want to email the questions to hello@dyslexiashow.co.uk, so hello@dyslexiashow.co.uk, I will then happily send either forward them on to Neil and ask Neil I'll give Neil I'll arrange for Neil to have a call with him to get some answers down and send them over to you.
I'm also on Twitter.
Yeah.
So people can find me at Neil Milliken. So
and how do you spell your surname, Neil?
So it's at, and then it's Neil, Neil. Milliken is Milliken.
And I would recommend everyone to also follow Neil and also follow Access Chat, because I do think it's an amazing thing you've done there, Neil, with that. I'm going to mention one thing. 3 people have asked what was the title of that time thing that I mentioned. It's called Timeoular, TIMEULAR.com, and it's designed for kind of tracking time. So it's not designed for planning time, it's tracking time. Especially for timesheets was always the worst thing. So I'm going to say thank you, Neil, for an amazing presentation. Thank you for all the comments and feedback that people have made. People have really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you.
That's it. It's been
my pleasure.
Thank you for bringing this together. It's brilliant. It's most appreciated for everyone. Again, look forward to seeing people at 11:30 for the next session, and then of course at 1 p.m. we've got Michael Vinesh from Microsoft that I know that Neil and me would both recommend listening to.
Michael's great.
Yeah, he's an amazing speaker. And then, of course, the last session from Lauren from Orcam, which will be talking about some of their products for dyslexic people. So, yeah, it's going to be a really good day. Look forward to seeing most of you back in about half an hour's time. I'm going to end this session now and look forward to seeing you then. So take care, everyone, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you again, Neil, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.